Okay, this is Elise Gross. Today we're speaking about estate and asset protection planning concerns in light of the coronavirus. We're in some pretty uncharted territories right now, and everyone in the world is affected in some way by this virus. So it's important for us to just kind of give you some ideas of things that you should be doing to maybe, settle things that might be happening in the future because of the coronavirus, or things that you need to just do proactively. None of us were able to predict this whole situation, and I don't think there's anyone who can really predict what's going to happen as a result. But today we're going to go over a few ideas. But I think the one thing we should take away from this is that it's a time for us to really reflect and just, be with our families and figure out what is important and to reassess, because it's going to be some difficult times ahead, and it's how we respond to it that's going to be important. So what I want to go over today is identifying some of the concerns that we see, locating and organizing your paperwork, verifying and updating beneficiary designations. You should do a financial checkup, reevaluate your business, and ultimately I think we really need to be prepared in this country for an ultimate quarantine. So I'm going to take each of these concerns separately, but some of the things that I came up with are estate planning, financial resources, debts and loan guarantees, remote access, and access to medical care. So we start with estate planning. The question we have to ask ourselves is, have you done your estate planning? Do you have your will and your trust in place? We don't know what's going to happen. I just heard a horrific story about a family in New Jersey. I'm sure you've all heard about it. A very large family. They're tracing their virus to a large family dinner, and they've already lost 3 members of their family in the last week, and there's several more in the hospital. I mean, it's unthinkable tragedies that might happen. So it's really important to have your documentation in place. So some of the documents that I thought about that were really critical are the durable power of attorney, which is the document that allows somebody to be able to handle financial matters for you and sign things for you if you're unable to. So for instance, let's say you're stuck wherever you are and you're in quarantine and something needs to be signed in order to get something very important accomplished. Someone could actually sign for you, even if you're perfectly fine, except that you're in quarantine. So it allows somebody to be able to handle these matters for you. The health care surrogate. We just don't know what will happen. Who's making those health care decisions for you if you're not able to do it? In fact, you should have backups. I always say you should have an alternate named on every document just in case, but these are documents that you should absolutely have. I hate even to use the next one, but it's so important, which is the living will. What happens if you're in a state where you can no longer communicate, you're unconscious, and the doctors are saying there's really no help for you, there's nothing they can do for you? Do you want to be using that respirator that might be needed for somebody else? It's a terrible thing to even have to think about, but if you know what's happening in Italy, where they've run out of respirators, they've had to pick and choose who has a better chance at living. So I think that having a living will in place, where you're actually letting your loved ones know that if there's no shot for you, then you would be okay with them taking no measures to keep you alive. Again, it's kind of a difficult situation, and I would still recommend having that document. So your last will and testament and revocable trust, that's what's going to happen with your assets when you die. So it's not about your health care. It's not about really what happens during your life, although the revocable trust can be used during your life, but it's, have you made a plan for who's going to get what when you die? And a lot of people don't even think about these things until they face a situation where mortality is a question. And I think, honestly, I'd like to think that, at my age, with my health, that even if I, God forbid, get the virus, nothing's going to happen. But I don't know that that's 100% true. So I think it's very important to make sure that we have all these things in place just in case. And God willing, we'll all, live through this and it'll pass, but at least we'll know that we've acted and we have our documents in place. And the last thing, prepaid funeral and burial. If you don't have that in place, a lot of these places are very short-staffed if they're even open. It's going to be very hard for somebody to handle a funeral or a burial at this point. So if you have that in place, make sure all that information is available to your family so that they know where to look. And that's if they can even, move you depending on where you are. So again, we don't know what's going to happen, but if you have that in place, make sure your family, whoever's closest to you, knows where you keep all of your paperwork and all of your documents. And we're going to go over, the type of paperwork that you should be keeping, but these are among them, and they should be kept in a safe and secure place, but make sure that somebody knows where they are. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about asset protection a little bit today, because that's what the Presser Law Firm primarily does. If you don't already have a plan in place for your assets, to keep your liquid assets safe, to keep your company assets safe, to own your business in a proper way, this should be a total wake-up call for you, because this is going to be very important. A lot of businesses are going to suffer greatly, and many of them are going to go out of business. And if you have personal guarantees and you don't have a good asset protection plan in place, it's going to be a problem. At least the asset protection plan is a way of defending yourself and putting yourself in the best possible position if the creditors come looking for their personal guarantees. So we're getting calls right and left from clients who have asset protection in place, who want to make sure to review and that they're doing everything properly. But those who don't have plans, you better start planning now, because if you don't, it might be too late, because they're going to start calling the loans, and there's going to be a lot of problems out there. In terms of financial resources, during this trying time, and I think it's going to be even after the immediate danger is past, the economic effects of this virus are going to go on for a very long time. So you need to be evaluating what your actual resources are. Do you have sufficient savings to tide you over? Do you have a line of credit that you can tap from? Do you have actual physical cash lying around? Do you have retirement? Now, keep in mind that retirement, you have a designated age when you can take it. So it's still at 59 and a half. If you take it before then, there could be penalties. I have not heard the IRS say, or the government saying anything about being able to take any sort of amounts earlier without any penalty. But you never know. That this is an unprecedented event, so I don't know if that's going to happen, but we can't rely upon that. So if you do have retirement, you may have to dip into that retirement and pay some sort of penalty. And then the biggest question that we're all going to have is, will we be working tomorrow? If we're on our own, if we're self-employed, is our business going to stay alive during this time? Are we able to sustain ourselves? Will we be getting any sort of income? If we're being laid off, I've had clients I've spoken with all week, they're laying people off every day. Some of them have told me that what they're doing is they're furloughing rather than terminating. It's my understanding, you may want to look into this a little further, that if you get furloughed, you can still use benefits that you're getting from your employer. So that if you're an employer, it might be a good idea to look at this before you start terminating people, because this is maybe a way to help them out at least somewhat during this time. But you need to assess what your financial resources are. What do you have to live on while this is all going on? Do you have anything you can tap into so that you can potentially stave off bankruptcy, which I think is going to be, unfortunately, a very huge thing going on very soon. So debts and loan guarantees are a very big concern, because what happens is a lot of people have signed personal guarantees, and if you can't pay your bills, and you can't pay your rent, and you can't pay your lease payments on your car or on your office equipment or on any sort of loans that you've taken out, the banks and the financial institutions are going to have no choice but to come after you, and they're going to try to come after you personally. So it's important to at least know what you have in place while you're home and you're quarantined or, limited working. Get all that paperwork together so that you have it, so that if you have to have somebody review it and see what your potential liabilities are, you have it available. It's better to get it now than to ask for it after you default, because then obviously it's going to be a little more difficult to get and the bank's going to be on you. So you want to look at what your options are. Maybe you can look into forbearance or interest only or some sort of forgiveness, or depending on what it is, maybe they'll temporarily reduce your payments. So get whatever information that you have, gather your paperwork, and have the facts so that they're available to you in case you need them. You don't know what your exposure is now, because people sign guarantees all the time, sign personal loans, and they don't really think about it. They just have it out there. Obviously, when you have a mortgage, you remember that. If you have a credit card, you remember that. But, sometimes you don't realize what you've signed for business. You want to make sure. Parents who co-sign for students for their student loans, that's going to be another issue, because from my understanding, student loans are now being required to be co-signed by parents. Now we're putting ourselves at risk there. So I think we need to know what it is that we're out there. Where are we exposed? Access to medical care. So right now they're suggesting and recommending, and rightly so, that everybody stay as close to home as possible and don't go out there. What happens if you get sick or if you think you've contracted the virus? Well, if you can hook yourself up with some sort of telemedicine, a lot of the insurance companies are offering this. A lot of the doctors are offering this. So you don't have to actually leave your home to go to the doctor, unless when you speak to the teledoc, they tell you that you need to go to an emergency room or you need to come in. Remember, every time you step foot out your door or you step foot in a doctor's office or a hospital, you're exposing yourself further and potentially exposing other people. So it's a catch-22 situation. So you need to make sure that you have the best options available to you. Have as many medicines that you take on a normal basis in your house for as long, as many doses as you have available or can get, have them in your house, just in case you quarantine. Make sure you have over-the-counter medicines. Make sure you're paying attention to all the news that's coming out as to things that do and do not help with the virus and things that may be a problem. Again, it's kind of hard with all the news that's going out there to know who to listen to, but I would say find the most reliable site and stick with it, and make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information. But definitely having some sort of source to be able to contact phone, not in person, is a first step to keeping yourself safer and to keeping everyone around you safer. Locating and organizing your paperwork. If you're stuck at home, this is a really fabulous opportunity to put your stuff in order. Make sure you have originals or at least copies of all those estate planning documents we talked about. Identify where they are and put them in a safe place. I like to put that stuff in a large plastic Ziploc just in general, because I feel like just in case there's ever a flood or I need to, escape at a moment's notice because of a fire or whatever it is, I can grab that bag. So I like to keep my estate planning stuff in a bag. And you can do that with other records as well. Make sure you have your medical records. Maybe scan them onto a flash drive so that if you ever needed to take them anywhere, you have them available to you. And you should have just separate records for every member of the family to the extent they're accessible to you. What about all your business agreements? If you've got partnership agreements or LLC agreements or shareholder agreements, you may want to have copies of those lying around and identifiable so that if you need to evaluate them in the wake of Corona, because something goes wrong with the business and you need to know who's responsible and what your obligations are, it's a very good idea to have those available to you. Also, copies of any loans or mortgage paperwork. We talked about that in the prior slide, but you need to know, again, what your obligations are and have everything all together in one place. And then I was thinking about this last one last night. If you don't have your stuff ready for your taxes, it does not look like the IRS is postponing any of the deadlines. There is a stay on the paying the taxes, I believe, for 90 days. There's a little bit of a delay. But I confirmed with the CPA this morning the IRS has not delayed the deadlines, which means April 15th is a deadline to at least get your extensions ready and out. So you should be spending the time that you have now that's available to you getting all that stuff ready. You're probably going to want to file as early as possible anyway, because if by chance you're entitled to a refund, you're going to need it probably. So I would take this time. And then another thing I was thinking about is, do you have a written budget? Because most people are going to be suffering from a loss of income. And if you don't have a written budget, and I'm as guilty as everyone, how do you know what you need to sustain yourself? Because you're going to have to figure out how to actually obtain that money, but you need to know what you actually need in order to survive and your family. So I would look for the most essential things and put them on your budget. The next thing I want to talk to you about is a financial checkup. A financial checkup is basically taking an assessment of all of your assets and all of your liabilities and seeing what you have. What's the net amount? What do you have to live on? We just talked about a budget. But let's talk about, figuring out exactly what assets you have, how they're owned, what are the values, because that is going to help you to assess what you really need to be living on and what your vulnerabilities are. So you want to make a list of your creditors. You want to make a list of who's responsible. Are both you and your spouse on the debt? Are you co-signing any loans for anyone else? Do you have any personal resources to tide you over for 3 to 6 months? How is your business going to pay for its keeping everything up when, paying employees, paying rent, lease payments, all of that kind of stuff? I spoke to someone this morning who said that a friend was in a business which had multiple spas, and they're all closed, and every location costs money. Are they going to have to lay off employees? So you're going to need to make sure that you have all the information available to you to see what resources you're going to have available to you and what the vulnerabilities are. And I know that seems to be a repetitive theme, but there's really no choice but to figure this stuff out. And now you're fortunate you've got the time. Another thing I think you should do is to look into who your beneficiaries are on everything. So whether it's your retirement, your IRAs, your 401ks, or your life insurance, or your bank accounts, you want to make sure that all those beneficiary designations are up to date. You don't know what's going to happen. They just changed the retirement law. I did a webinar on it last month for for IRAs, there were some significant changes to beneficiary possibilities on IRAs. Not just who can be a beneficiary, but, you know, depending on who you name is how long an IRA can stretch out for. So I've advised people to visit their IRAs and see what their beneficiary designations are to see if they need to make any changes or speak to their estate planner about how you can use the new IRA laws to your advantage, or at least to make the best of it, because the changes are not necessarily advantageous. You also want to know if you're the beneficiary of any accounts, retirements, or trusts from people who are not well, because it's kind of, you know, not a nice thing to say, but you want to know what the position might be if something happens to somebody else. You also want to make sure that if you're helping your parents or grandparents out with these things, that they've structured things properly, that they have contingent beneficiaries for everything, since we don't know what's going to happen with our primary beneficiaries. We have to plan ahead. This is a huge situation, your business. What type of business are you in? Can your business survive for the next 1 to 6 months if you have little to no revenue coming in? Should you just cut your losses and close up shop? Or do you have a way of staying open and providing some sort of service or product during this time? You have to decide, what are you going to do with your employees? Some of them have probably been with you for a very long time. Do you continue paying them? Obviously, that's always the nicest thing to do, but are you in a position to do that? Maybe you should have a conversation with your key employees and find out, you know, would they rather go on unemployment, or would they rather just take a pay cut or go without pay for a while but stay on the books as an employee? I would also look into what I said earlier about the furlough concept, because obviously nobody wants to fire employees, but I've been listening to clients for the last 2 weeks, and they've been laying people off right and left, usually a little each day, because, you know, they have no choice. It's not their first choice, but in order to keep the business afloat, in order for them to be financially solvent themselves, they may have to let people go. I understand that the unemployment waiting period has been, they've done something with that, so I think you can get unemployment pretty quickly if you do get laid off or fired. But, you know, these are things you should absolutely look into, and if you are going to lay off your employees or terminate them, the more information that you could provide to them is on their exit, the better you'll feel, the better they'll feel. Obviously, this isn't a good situation, but the more you can do to help them, you know, that'll be best for everyone long term. And I would also be honest with them based on your business. If you think that this is going to be a permanent situation, I would let them know so that they know that, you know, they have to be looking for something else, and this is just not a temporary setback. If you really don't know, then again, be honest with them. But if you are pretty sure that it's going to be permanent, just be honest, because they need to plan. They need to assess their resources. Another thing you could think about is, can you develop a new source of revenue with your current business? Can you repurpose what you're doing, what your company does? Maybe there are other opportunities out there that with your employees and their skill sets, with your manufacturing capabilities, or whatever service you're providing, maybe there's a way for you to repurpose and find a new source of revenue. Maybe look at this as an opportunity rather than as a tragedy. So if you have something that you could either do now, or you could start positioning yourself to do during the crisis and post-recovery, then this is what you should be doing during this time. You should be plotting it out and seeing how you could make the best of this very awful situation. So just to recap on the business, assess whether you have the revenue to sustain yourself even without any business coming in. Be honest with your employees. Look into whatever resources you could possibly suggest to your employees. And most importantly, is there a way for you to be able to profit from a different source of business using the resources in your business that you currently have, whether it's your manufacturing equipment, whether it's your employees, whether it's your software, whatever it is, see what you can use to create some sort of new revenue source. So quarantine. I'm sure there are some of you that are already in self-imposed quarantine, either because you had to or because it was a recommendation. I applaud you. I think it's a wonderful thing because you're really helping out the outside world and helping to keep the virus from spreading. I would look at it as an opportunity. I would make sure that I have all food and supplies that you need to have, and I would make sure that you have all tools available to you to work remotely and to continue to earn an income. For instance, I actually teach a course at the local university, and obviously the universities are closed. It looks like we're closed for the rest of the semester. I'm now teaching my course online. It requires me to change some of the things that I do in my course because what I do in person is going to be a little different than what I do online, but everybody is playing along and doing what they have to do, and we're having to make some concessions, obviously, but I can work remotely. I can work remotely for the law firm because we're all set up. So if you're not already set up, you should have been before this happened anyway, but you should do whatever you need to do. Don't forget your networking sources also. If you're part of any networking groups and you have anything to say about it, encourage them to keep meeting. Just do it virtually because you're going to need your referral sources, and you're all going to need to help each other. So I would keep having those meetings. I would, if you're home with the kids and they're out of school, make sure you're putting together some sort of plan for them. Homeschooling is not for everyone. I used to tell my children that there weren't enough drugs on the planet for me to homeschool them. With that said, my son went on virtual school about 1.5 years ago on his own, and he does it on his own. So I don't have to actually homeschool him, but I do have to encourage him to get it done. So I think that it's going to be a learning curve for parents and children, and you just have to make sure that you have some sort of educational plan with your school, with your kids, so that they're staying on track. And another thing that I was thinking the other day when I was listening to some people vent on Facebook about how they're ready to kill themselves because their kids are home and what are we doing with each other, and they're the entertainment committee. And I thought about this and I said, you know what? Parents should not be cruise directors. They should be pilots. They should not be looking for the entertainment. They should be looking for directing the kids, for instructing them. There's obviously going to be entertainment as a component, but they should be directing. They should not be trying to find what's going to entertain these kids. They can entertain themselves after they've, gotten their work done. You should also establish a protocol in your house in case somebody comes down with the virus. Where are you going to quarantine them? What's going to be the plan? And you should, talk to your family about it. Make sure everybody's, understanding what the plan's going to be so that it's not a shocking event, because it's a likelihood that it's going to happen. The other thing, as I said before, you want to take this is an opportunity. So what about that list of things you've always meant to do, or the things you've always wanted to learn? I saw my niece posted something which was really quite clever. She posted, I can teach you virtually how to knit and Chinese because she speaks Chinese. What can you teach me? I thought, what a great opportunity to be able to learn from each other virtually and share our talents, and it'll help with some of the boredom and monotony. So I thought that was great. Also, if you're not a board game player, what a great opportunity to spend some family time and start with the board games. It's a great way to teach your kids strategy and working well with others, because these are things that are going to help them in the future. And lastly, if we're out and about, whether we should be or we shouldn't be, keep the elderly in mind. if you know somebody who can't get out or shouldn't get out, see what you can do to help them. Can you bring them things? Can you call people? Can you send them jokes and texts and cheer them up? Because people are lonely. People are in quarantine. You're seeing it all over social media, all the people posting, all the celebrities who are just, trying to entertain. And I think that's a really good thing. So I think if you can do that and help other people, I think it can go a long way to help with this situation. Some of the resources that I wanted to put out there, there's bridge loans available in Florida, and I'm sure other states are doing the same thing. Short-term, 0%. Other states might have a higher number or a lower number. We're at $50K if you can qualify. Here's the site. Look to the irs.gov for any changes on the requirements for filing in case they do delay the April 15th deadline. I don't see why they wouldn't. They've done it in certain regions for hurricanes, so chances are they'll do it, but I don't know. But if you keep track of what what the deadlines are, irs.gov. If you're a small business owner, you may want to look at the disaster relief loans that the SBA has, and talk to your credit card companies because they're trying to work with you. Maybe not all of them, but if you're home and you've got nothing much to do, you might as well call the credit card company and find out if there's anything that you could do about waiting to pay, maybe paying a smaller amount. There's a lot of opportunities out there, so you might as well take the time that you have to find out what you can do to help yourself and help your family. If you have any questions regarding estate planning, asset protection, any of the things we've spoken about today, feel free to contact the office. We'll set up a preliminary consultation for you. It won't cost you anything. We're here to help. If you're already one of our clients and have an asset protection plan and you want a refresher, it's not, we offer refreshers. It's not a huge amount of money to get a refresher. I would recommend it, just having everything revisited, doing what we talked about before, which is the financial checkup. We're happy to help. Again, we're in uncharted waters here, and every day is day by day, and it's going to be different wherever you are than wherever I am. So if there's anything that we can do to help, please reach out. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay in touch with your loved ones. Make sure everybody knows where you are and that you're healthy and what your condition is. And I wish everybody good luck and good health. And if you are not already getting our newsletter, you never know what important information is going to be on there, so please let us know and we'll get you on that newsletter. It's an e-newsletter. You don't have to touch it. So again, be safe, be healthy, and have a great rest of the day.